A police siren flashed through the darkness. A rogue officer, intoxicated by his own authority, was preparing to destroy a woman's life simply because he believed he could. He thought she was an easy target. He had no idea that the man sleeping quietly in her passenger seat was his commanding officer, the chief of police. It was deep into the night when Camille Rowan guided her obsidian-black Lexus LS along Highway 9. A light, freezing drizzle had begun to fall, coating the asphalt with a dangerous sheen and blurring the distant streetlights into soft halos. Camille kept both hands carefully positioned on the leather-wrapped steering wheel. The vehicle's cruise control was set precisely at the legal speed limit. She was a woman who lived according to rules. As a senior corporate attorney, her life revolved around statutes, legal precedents, and meticulous attention to detail. On this particular night, however, she was simply an exhausted wife driving her husband home after a demanding charity gala downtown. Beside her in the passenger seat, Desmond Rowan was completely asleep. Desmond had recently been appointed chief of police for the sprawling municipality of Oakhaven. He had been recruited from outside the department to clean up an agency drowning in civil rights lawsuits and corruption scandals. The transition had been brutal. His days were consumed by punishing work schedules, combative union representatives, and hostile media briefings. A severe migraine had eventually forced him to take medication that left him deeply unconscious. His seat was reclined as far as it would go. His broad shoulders disappeared into the shadows of the luxurious cabin, while a dark wool overcoat rested across his chest like a blanket. From outside the Lexus, he was nearly invisible behind the deeply tinted side windows. Camille released a quiet breath and lowered the radio until the soft jazz became little more than a whisper. They were not far from home. Then the darkness behind her exploded. Blinding flashes of red and blue flooded the cabin and reflected violently from the rearview mirror. A police siren sounded twice, a sharp, commanding order to pull over. Camille's heart reacted with a sudden and familiar surge. It did not matter that she was wealthy and highly educated. It did not matter that her husband was the most powerful law enforcement official in the county. She was a black woman driving along an isolated road in the middle of the night. Generations of fear closed around her chest like an icy hand. "Desmond," she whispered instinctively. He did not move. The medication held him in a deep sleep, his chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. Camille knew better than to make any sudden movement. She smoothly activated her turn signal, guided the heavy sedan onto the gravel shoulder, and shifted the car into park. She switched on the interior light and lowered her window completely. Then she placed both hands flat against the top of the steering wheel, making certain they were clearly visible. She waited. In the side mirror, the silhouette of a police officer emerged from the glare of the cruiser's headlights. He approached slowly, moving with an arrogant swagger that immediately revealed how much he enjoyed his authority. The officer's name was Brent Kesler. Kesler was a veteran of the Oakhaven Police Department who treated his badge not as a shield meant to protect the public, but as a personal crown. His personnel record was filled with excessive force complaints, allegations of racial profiling, and repeated acts of insubordination. Under the previous administration, union attorneys had routinely buried every complaint. Kesler represented exactly the kind of corruption Desmond had been hired to remove from the department. However, the two men had never met face to face. Kesler stopped behind the Lexus's center pillar, using a standard tactical position. Without warning, he struck the heavy metal head of his flashlight against the driver's window. The violent crack made Camille flinch. Before she could speak, Kesler raised the flashlight and directed its blinding beam straight into her eyes. "License, registration, and proof of insurance, now!" he barked. His voice carried an aggression that was entirely unnecessary. He did not offer the standard greeting required during a traffic stop. Camille blinked against the piercing light, but kept her voice controlled, professional, and calm. "Good evening, officer. The documents are inside my purse on the center console. I'm going to reach for them now." "I didn't ask for a speech," Kesler snapped. His right hand settled heavily on the grip of his holstered weapon. "Just give them to me." Camille moved slowly. She retrieved her wallet, removed her driver's license, and collected the registration and insurance cards. Then she carefully extended them through the open window. Kesler snatched the documents from her fingers. He lowered the flashlight just enough to illuminate the identification before sweeping the beam across the immaculate cream-colored leather interior of the expensive sedan. When the light passed across the passenger side, it briefly revealed the dark shape of Desmond's overcoat. However, his seat was reclined so far that his face remained hidden by shadows. Kesler apparently assumed the shape was either a sleeping passenger or a pile of clothing. He looked from the license to Camille. A condescending sneer twisted his features. "Camille Rowan," he read slowly, deliberately stretching the syllables in a mocking manner. "This is a lot of car for a woman driving around this late at night. Whose vehicle is it?" Camille felt anger rise beneath her skin, but years of legal training kept her expression neutral. The vehicle belongs to me, officer. The registration clearly confirms that. Of course it does, Kesler replied with a dismissive scoff. He leaned closer and invaded her personal space. The odor of stale coffee and cigarette smoke clung to his uniform. What exactly do you do for a living that allows you to afford a brand new Lexus? I am a senior partner at a corporate law firm downtown, Camille answered smoothly. May I ask why you stopped me? My cruise control was set at the posted speed limit. You do not ask the questions here, Kesler growled. Her composure irritated him. She was not trembling or lowering her eyes. She was articulate, calm, and looking directly at him. He was accustomed to feeding on fear, and Camille refused to provide it. You were swerving, he said. You failed to remain inside a single lane. With respect, officer, this vehicle has an active lane assistance system. I remained perfectly centered. Kesler's eyes narrowed into dark, hostile slits. He pushed his face even closer to the window. Are you calling me a liar, girl? The degrading word struck the air like a slap. Girl! Camille's jaw tightened. She understood exactly what was happening. This was not a legitimate traffic stop. It was an intimidation tactic conducted by a man who believed the empty highway and the badge on his chest placed him above the law. I am simply describing how I was driving, officer, Camille said. Her voice lowered slightly and became as cold as professional steel. Should you intend to issue a citation for failing to maintain a lane, please write it so I may leave. It is late. Kesler released a harsh, barking laugh. So now you're in a hurry? You're giving me orders? He stepped away briefly, adjusted his heavy utility belt, and leaned toward the window again. Now that I'm standing here, I can smell something. Camille frowned. Confusion crossed her face for only a moment before the sickening realization struck her. It was one of the oldest lies used by corrupt officers to manufacture probable cause. I smell a strong odor of unburned marijuana coming from this vehicle, Kesler announced loudly. He deliberately projected his voice toward the patrol cruiser's dashboard camera. I need you to step out of the car, Camille. That is completely false, Camille replied sharply, her patience beginning to fracture. There are no drugs inside this vehicle. Neither my husband nor I smoke. I said get out of the vehicle, Kesler roared. His hand released the safety strap covering his sidearm. The sudden shout echoed through the confined cabin and finally penetrated the heavy wall of Desmond's medicated sleep. His eyes slowly opened. His head throbbed, and his vision remained slightly blurred. But the moment he recognized the aggressive tone outside the driver's window, the instincts of an experienced police officer flooded his system. He did not move. Desmond kept his breathing slow and even while listening carefully. I am not leaving this vehicle without probable cause, Camille said firmly. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. Your statement about smelling marijuana is false. I know my rights. She narrowed her eyes and examined the nameplate on his uniform. Officer Kesler. Hearing his name spoken aloud pushed Kesler further into rage. He despised civilians who understood their constitutional rights. He especially hated black civilians who addressed him as an equal. You do not have rights when you are suspected of committing a felony, you stupid. Kesler stopped himself before speaking a racial slur, remembering the cruiser's camera. But the hatred in his voice remained unmistakable. He seized the radio microphone attached to his shoulder. Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I have a suspect detained on Highway 9 near mile marker 14. The suspect is combative and refusing lawful orders. I need an emergency backup response. Copy, Unit 4. Backup is on the way, the dispatcher answered. Cold sweat formed along the back of Camille's neck. Combative. That word could become a death sentence. It was the term corrupt officers used to justify dragging someone from a vehicle, slamming them against the pavement, or doing something even worse. I am sitting perfectly still with both hands on the steering wheel, Camille said. Despite her effort to remain composed, a slight tremor entered her voice. I am not combative. You are deliberately escalating a routine traffic stop. Beside her, unnoticed by the enraged officer, Desmond's mind raced. The medication's fog disappeared beneath a wave of cold fury. He recognized the name, Officer Brent Kesler. Desmond had recently been reviewing Kessler's internal affairs file while considering whether the department possessed enough evidence to dismiss him or whether they needed to wait for another serious violation. Now the violation was unfolding in front of him. Desmond made an immediate tactical decision. Should he reveal himself, Kesler would retreat, apologize, and insist that the encounter had been a misunderstanding. The matter would become another dispute between conflicting accounts, giving union lawyers room to defend him. But if Desmond remained hidden until backup arrived, he would see exactly how deeply the corruption extended. Additional officers would bring additional body camera recordings, creating evidence no attorney could easily erase. Beneath the dark overcoat, Desmond slowly extended one hand and located Camille's thigh. He squeezed it twice with deliberate firmness. It was a private signal they had used before. I am awake. I am here. Trust me. Camille startled slightly at the touch, but immediately understood. She did not look toward Desmond or reveal his presence. However, the suffocating isolation in her chest disappeared. In its place came the formidable confidence of an experienced trial attorney who knew she held the strongest possible advantage. Final warning, Camille, Kesler sneered. He reached a thick arm through the open window and moved toward the interior door handle. Unfasten your seatbelt and step out, or I will pull you out by your expensive hair and charge you with resisting arrest. If you reach inside my vehicle, Officer Kesler, you will be violating my Fourth Amendment rights, Camille warned. Her voice was steady and filled with absolute authority. I recommend waiting for your backup. Kesler froze with his hand only inches from the lock. Then he laughed. It was a cruel and ugly sound that echoed across the rain-covered highway. I'm glad you want to wait for backup, he said, revealing a feral smile. When the others arrive, we are going to tear this expensive little car apart. He lowered his voice. We will find whatever you're hiding. Then you will learn what happens to people who believe they can speak down to the police in Oak Haven. In the passenger seat, Desmond clenched his jaw until his teeth hurt. He remained hidden beneath the coat like a predator waiting patiently in tall grass. In the distance, approaching sirens cut through the night. Keep digging your grave, Kesler, the police chief thought. Keep digging. The sirens grew louder through the freezing rain, echoing from the dense pine trees surrounding Highway 9. 2 police cruisers came racing around the bend. Their tires threw enormous sheets of dirty water into the air before both vehicles braked hard and positioned themselves around Camille's Lexus. Their headlights cut across the darkness and illuminated the falling rain in sharp diagonal lines. Doors opened and 3 officers rushed into the storm. Kesler remained beside Camille's window. He merely turned his head and smiled as his colleagues approached. His reinforcements had arrived, strengthening his belief that he was untouchable. The first officer to reach the Lexus was Tate Ellison, a nervous rookie whose hand hovered uncertainly near his taser. Behind him came Sergeant Warren Pike, a longtime veteran known for looking away whenever Kesler decided to impose his own version of street justice. What do we have, Kesler? Sergeant Pike demanded. He directed his flashlight through the rear window of the Lexus. Dispatch said you had a combative suspect refusing a lawful command. Are we arresting her? We are absolutely arresting her, Sergeant, Kesler replied proudly. He expanded his chest with arrogant satisfaction. I stopped her for swerving. She is behaving erratically, refusing basic commands, and the vehicle smells strongly of unburned marijuana. He gestured dismissively toward Camille. I ordered her out, but she decided she wanted to play attorney. Apparently, she thinks she understands her rights better than we understand the law. Camille remained completely still. The leather beneath her palms had become damp, but her heart was no longer racing. Desmond's reassuring signal had anchored her. She was no longer a frightened civilian isolated on an empty road. She was the bait inside a trap that was about to close. I have already informed Officer Kesler that there are no drugs inside this vehicle, Camille said loudly. She carefully projected every word toward the body cameras worn by the newly arrived officers. I have not consented to a search. I have also clearly stated that his claim of smelling marijuana is completely false and has been invented to manufacture probable cause. Sergeant Pike scoffed. Listen, ma'am, you do not control the situation. Officer Kesler says he detected contraband, which allows us to search the vehicle. His tone hardened. Unfasten your seatbelt and step out before we pull you through the window. Do not make this more difficult than it already is. Camille took a slow, deliberate breath. I am complying with your order under protest, Sergeant. I want the record to reflect that I feel threatened. and believe this traffic stop is unlawful. Tell it to the judge, Kesler sneered. He stepped backward and violently pulled open the driver's door, using enough force to make the hinges groan. Camille calmly released her seatbelt and stepped into the freezing rain. The cold struck immediately, and the drizzle began soaking through her expensive silk blouse. Still, she stood upright with perfect posture. She raised both hands to shoulder level, keeping her palms open and visible. Rookie Officer Ellison quickly approached. He grabbed Camille roughly by the upper arm and pushed her against the wet metal of the rear quarter panel. He kicked her feet apart and searched her with an aggressive awkwardness that revealed the poor training allowed under the department's previous leadership. "She's clean," Ellison said. He sounded almost disappointed. "Watch her, Kesler." Kesler ordered. His attention had already shifted toward the Lexus's luxurious interior. "I'm going to tear this thing apart. If I find even a single seed, I'm impounding the vehicle, and she is going to county jail." Kesler leaned through the open driver's door. His flashlight swept across the dashboard, center console, and footwells. When he found nothing but perfectly clean floor mats, he grunted in frustration. He withdrew and slammed the door. Then he marched aggressively around the front of the vehicle toward the passenger side. Behind the heavily tinted glass, the interior appeared almost completely black. Kesler did not knock. He seized the chrome handle and pulled the heavy passenger door open. Then he thrust his head in the blinding flashlight directly inside. "All right, let's see what you're hiding." The words died inside his throat. His sentence stopped so abruptly that it seemed as though an invisible wire had severed his voice. The flashlight illuminated the passenger seat. It illuminated the dark wool overcoat. Then it illuminated the face of the man now sitting upright beneath it. Desmond Rowan's eyes burned with a cold and terrifying fury that seemed to pull the oxygen from the freezing night. The police chief did not blink. He stared directly into the center of the blinding beam, his expression an unreadable mask of absolute command. For a long, agonizing moment, the only sound along Highway 9 was the metallic rhythm of rain striking the roofs of the police vehicles. Kesler's mind seemed to stop functioning. The arrogance that had fueled him disappeared. In its place came the sickening terror of a man watching the ground vanish beneath his feet. He knew that face. Every police officer in Oak Haven knew it. Desmond's photograph had appeared throughout the local press since his appointment as chief. He was the man who had dismissed 2 corrupt captains soon after taking office. "Chief," Kesler stammered. The word escaped him as a weak, high-pitched whisper. His hand shook so violently that the flashlight beam danced across the leather headrest. Desmond slowly raised one hand and pushed the light away from his face. He did not shout. He did not rush from the vehicle. He moved with the deliberate precision of a predator that had successfully cornered its prey. "Officer Kesler," Desmond said. His voice was dangerously quiet, a deep baritone cutting clearly through the falling rain. "Are you absolutely certain that you smelled marijuana inside this vehicle?" Kesler stumbled backward. His boots slipped against the wet asphalt. All color had disappeared from his face, leaving him pale beneath the harsh cruiser lights. Because," Desmond continued as he slowly unfastened his seatbelt and stepped out of the car, "if you smelled marijuana inside this vehicle, then you believe the chief of police is transporting illegal narcotics." He rose to his full height and towered over the corrupt officer. "Is that your allegation, Officer Kesler?" On the opposite side of the Lexus, Sergeant Pike and Rookie Ellison froze. Pike peered across the roof and recognized the imposing figure of their commanding officer. His eyes widened in horror. Ellison immediately released Camille's arm and hurried backward, raising his hands in panicked surrender. "Chief Rowan, sir, we didn't know," Sergeant Pike blurted. His voice cracked. Kesler requested backup. He reported that she was combative. We were only responding to his call. Desmond did not look at Pike. His eyes remained fixed on Kesler, who was now breathing rapidly beneath his Kevlar vest. "I asked you a question, Officer Kesler," Desmond repeated. He took one slow step forward. "Did you smell marijuana inside my wife's car?" His expression hardened. "Or did you manufacture a felony allegation so you could terrorize a woman you believed was traveling alone?" "Chief, please, it was a mistake," Kesler pleaded. "The rain and darkness confused my senses. I thought I smelled something." His voice broke. "I swear I was only doing my job." "Your job?" Desmond's voice finally cracked like a whip, echoing from the trees. "Your job is to protect and serve the citizens of Oak Haven." He moved closer. "Your job is to uphold the law, not distort it to satisfy your pathetic ego." Desmond pointed toward Camille. "I listened to you mock my wife. I heard you threaten to drag her from the car by her hair. I heard you lie about smelling narcotics so you could justify an illegal search." He extended a rigid finger toward the glowing indicator on Kesler's body camera. "And I am grateful that your camera is recording because District Attorney Preston Hale will need that footage when I personally deliver the case file for your prosecution." Kesler's knees weakened. He grabbed the Lexus's side mirror to prevent himself from falling onto the wet road. Prosecution? Chief, please, I have a pension, I have a family. You cannot do this. You did this to yourself, Desmond replied coldly. He turned toward the other officers. Sergeant Pike, Officer Ellison. Both men immediately straightened, terrified that Desmond's anger was about to fall on them. Yes, sir, they answered together. Release my wife immediately, Desmond ordered. Ellison moved away from Camille and apologized repeatedly while giving her more space. Camille straightened her rain-soaked silk blouse. Her expression held the cold satisfaction of someone who had finally been vindicated. She walked around the rear of the Lexus and stood beside her husband. Her presence silently confirmed that the trap had closed. Now, Desmond continued, returning his attention to Sergeant Pike, you will approach Officer Kesler. His voice remained absolute. You will remove his duty belt, badge, and firearm. Then you will place him inside the rear of your cruiser. Desmond looked toward Kesler. He is under arrest for official oppression, filing a false police report, and making terroristic threats. He continued without hesitation. You will take him directly to central booking and process him exactly as you would process any other violent felony suspect. Sergeant Pike hesitated briefly and looked toward his longtime colleague. If you hesitate again, Sergeant, Desmond warned in a terrifying whisper, you will be sitting beside him in the rear of that cruiser. He held Pike's gaze. Have I made myself perfectly clear? Yes, Chief, Pike answered sharply. He approached Kesler. Put your hands behind your back, Brent. Do not make this worse. Kesler did not resist. He was completely broken. He allowed Pike to remove his firearm and badge. The heavy equipment struck the wet asphalt with a metallic sound. Ellison secured cold steel handcuffs around Kessler's wrists. The disgraced officer began openly crying, his tears blending with the freezing rain running down his face. Desmond and Camille watched silently as Kesler was pushed into the rear of a patrol cruiser. The door slammed shut, trapping him behind the heavy metal security partition. Sergeant Pike, Desmond called before the officers could leave. Pike turned with an expression of dread. Have Internal Affairs Investigator Lionel Serrano meet me in my office early in the morning, Desmond instructed. Serrano was one of the most relentless and strictly disciplined investigators in the state, and the mention of his name made the message unmistakable. We are opening a complete audit of every arrest Officer Kesler made during his years in this department. Desmond's voice became colder. And should I discover that any of you protected him, I will dismantle this department brick by brick. Pike swallowed and nodded repeatedly. Understood, Chief, right away. The cruisers slowly reversed and completed awkward turns on the narrow highway. Then they accelerated back toward the city, taking the corrupt officer with them. The flashing red and blue lights gradually vanished into the distance. Highway 9 was once again swallowed by the quiet, steady rhythm of the rain. Desmond turned toward his wife. The terrifying authority disappeared from his expression, replaced by the protective warmth of a devoted husband. He gently wiped a raindrop from her cheek. Are you all right? He asked softly. Camille looked toward the empty road and then up at the man she loved. A small victorious smile touched her lips. I'm fine, Desmond, but I think you may need another migraine pill. The first one seems to have stopped working. Desmond chuckled. It was a deep and exhausted sound. He opened the passenger door for her. Let's go home, counselor. We have a great deal of paperwork ahead of us. If you felt the power of justice in this story, press the like button and share the video to remind others that accountability matters. We regularly bring you intense, true-to-life drama and powerful stories of consequences finally catching up with those who abuse their authority. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you never miss another compelling story. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts about the police chief's unforgettable response.